Hey everyone, you have Marcel. For today's discussion, I want to cover the concept of whether or not MGTOW or alpha. But before I go into it, I'll point out a couple of things. Firstly, alpha, or the concept of being alpha, is different for every person. And I'm not meaning it in an individual kind of sense, like it's relative. In some ways it is, but more in the concept of when you say alpha, there's like the textbook definition of alpha. The person in charge, the guy who gets to pick everyone he wants on his team. Some might say it has to do with life accomplishments, finances, romance, maybe all of the above. So what it is to be alpha is conceptually grafted into whatever field the person happens to be speaking of. I'm referring to it as the type of guy who is powerful, gets what he wants, gets acknowledged by others, and gets to date whoever he wants to for the most part. Regarding men, he's the type of guy that most other men would want to be. Furthermore, I can't think of many undoxed MGTOW, ones that haven't ever shown their face, who have ever claimed to be alpha or to be high social class. At least not directly. I mean, it may be implied, it may be said in tongue-in-cheek, but I've never heard them outright say or claim some kind of direct social standing. I think to most of us MGTOW, it really doesn't matter. Though I, along with many others, have admitted to at least at one point being severely beta or blue-pilled, which would make sense because you have to have at least walked that path to understand it to any degree. At least to the level that you'd want to spend years discussing it and trying to help others avoid it, right? Though I will say there are some that are going to claim that this video is my attempt to claiming that I am alpha. To that again, I say it really doesn't matter. I sit back and I read through my comment section, and there are dozens or even hundreds of trolls or whatever they want to call themselves, basically just claiming people following our philosophy are just wounded animals trying to cry about not getting what we want. You see them all day long, comments like, "Stop crying, you stupid beta. I have a good girlfriend and we've been happy. Clearly you're just picking the wrong women." You know, garbage like that. All of this founded off of what information they have about any of us other than that we have opinions. That we have made observations about society other than the norm. We have a different perspective, and therefore that defines us fundamentally as something lower than them. Which of course, when phrased that way, would seem ridiculous, but try telling them that. When I considered this topic the other day, I was reflecting on some experiences I had when I was younger. Of course, most of my videos are based on my own personal past experiences. I was interacting with some women online through a dating app. I want to say it was Match.com. I had put a lot of work into my profile, put a lot of pictures up, presented myself very well. Granted, of course, this is just my perception. Looking back on it, I did a good job. And yet I was still getting comments like, "You're too young for me." I was, in my early 20s, late teens? Thing is, with my knowledge today, I know for a fact that my age really didn't matter that much. Yeah, there are women out there that are going to say, "Oh, well, you're a year younger than me, I'm looking for somebody in their 40s. And, knowing market value, that makes perfect sense today. But if I were of the right personality type, if I were more attractive to them at the time, if I had a lot more money or better stuff, my age would not have mattered. I can almost guarantee that. What's really interesting about it, though, during that time frame in my life, I was making extremely good money. Between things like active duty pay, military-supported college money, and owning my own furniture business, I was doing good. This was near the time frame in my life when I did all that world traveling, and my profiles reflected that, at least to a degree. So looking back on it, if I had money, nice place, this is right around the time where my main transportation was a Crossfire and a crotch rocket, which is not bad at all as far as how I should come across, and yet I was still getting this whole beta appeal. You guys realize when a woman says something like that a guy's too young for her? it really has nothing to do with age, right? I couldn't figure out, though, why in that situation, when I was doing basically everything right that I can tell, looking back on it, even with the knowledge I have now, that for some reason I was still getting spun as beta. It almost felt like it didn't matter what I did, that label had sort of been pinned on me. Now, I know there are those out there that are going to tell me, oh, well, you know, Marcel, all it was your personality. It was the way you were acting. It was the phrasing you were using. Look, there's a lot of ways, especially digitally, to alter the way you're perceived in what you say. And if you take a psychology background behind that, it's not hard to change the viewable perception of things, and yet that still didn't help. Of course, if I were to try and fight with that scenario again today, I could probably find ways to make it work. Not that I want to, referring to the dating sites and stuff. I dealt with a lot of this outside of the internet too. In fact, I'd say that I got the most response from people in real life to that kind of a situation. Here are two of the things that I came up with when I was thinking about this. Firstly, there is an intended perception from people in general, but especially from women. Let me explain what I mean by that. When a man interacts with a woman in any social setting or any setting in general, she has already decided what her perception of him is supposed to be. Yes, it is possible for that to change, but it's pretty unlikely. If her first perception or her intended perception of him is to be beta, very little that he's going to do is going to change that. It doesn't matter how much money he has. It doesn't matter what kind of cars he's got. Yes, there is a way to break that down in the extreme, which is where you get a lot of those gold digger pranks that pop up, but it takes a lot sometimes. Furthermore, have you noticed that a lot of these gold digger type pranks, that kind of scenario that gets set up, whether you believe they're real or not, I think at least a number of them are. Have you noticed it is extremely rare to see more than one woman involved in the scenario? It is almost always a sole woman without any friend support around her. There is a reason for that. I believe that a great number of women validate their friends as far as their social standing goes, whether or not they're dateable. Speaking of men specifically, like what guys they want to date, I believe that they rate them as far as their dateability in a social sense. Have you ever noticed that when you talk to a girl or ask her out, that she will go to either all of your friends or all of her friends and get feedback as to whether or not she should date you before she says yes or no? It's almost like she communes with the hive mind before making a decision. I can't tell you the number of times I have had to deal with that shit where I've asked out a really awesome girl, we would have clicked, it would have gone fine, but she spoke to one of my ex-friends or one of my ex-girlfriends or something that trashed it for me. This is one of the reasons why I tell guys that are out there blue pill that are trying to hook up to stop worrying about little things that they do to, focus on interacting with that individual woman and focus on improving themselves in the great scheme of it in the long term. Because in the end, they have to change not her perception, but everyone else's perception of him before anything will change in his ability to get with the women that he wants. So what was I doing wrong with my profiles back then? Most likely it was not what I was doing myself, or what I'd accomplished within the photos and the comments within the profile. It was how I was interacting with the people and who I was interacting with. At least that's one part of it, right? I'm sure people can find other things that were wrong with those profiles if I were to ever show them. You guys want to take a guess whether or not it was me by myself in most of those, or me with a whole bunch of friends? Most of it was just me by myself, though the stuff that I was doing was pretty epic. At least in my perspective. All this really plays out, though, if you were to sum it up, when it comes to the 80-20 rule. For example, men and women have a different approach when it comes to mate selection and for what reasons. Now that may be obvious, but let me explain. For a guy, if you come into a room full of pigs and one of them's wearing lipstick, you pretty much know which one you're gonna kiss, right? I think I originally got that quote from Sandman, so props. Women, on the other hand, it's the same idea from a different perspective. They will take all of the men that they interact with, that they come across, and they will find ways to put a funnel on them where they only get to acknowledge or be with the top 20%. It's likely that none of them are pigs. They could all be great guys, and they're going to find ways to filter out all of the less than great ones, or anything that they can come up with. If it's 10 guys that all have awesome cars, they're gonna find the one that has the best looking suit. If it's 10 guys with awesome cars and suits, they're gonna find the one with the nicest hair. Whereas your average guy is not going to be that critical and is probably just going to be happy having a girlfriend with a nice car and nice hair in guy terms. Heck, given the option of 10 women, he's probably just gonna, be like, hey, do I really have to choose? The difference in selection, though, for the modern woman comes down to if she gets the guy with the nicest hair and the nicest car, how that is going to influence her social interactions with other people and the effect that will have on her personal, emotional self-esteem. If she has the nicest guy of the group, it increases her social standing, which I would argue is probably the most important thing to most women. So how does all of this play into whether or not someone is alpha? Taking into consideration a couple of things. One, a big part of being quote-unquote alpha is through social perceptions. In other words, a guy is not alpha because he says he is or because of anything that he's accomplished. He is because those around him claim he is and reinforce it. Furthermore, it acts from a female perspective more as a filtering system to weed out the top percentage in order to mate select. Therefore, the more guys hack that code, the more they have to adjust it in order for the filtering system to still work. This is why it's almost impossible to find a silver bullet, because the minute guys realize that women are looking for the guy with the nicest hair, and they all come into the club with the nicest hair, they have to choose something else to pair select to filter out everyone they don't want to be with. Notice where pickup artists are more interested in finding ways to stand out and less on individual specific things. Sometimes standing out is even more important than confidence. So what about all us MGTOW? Where do we fall in this category? Yes, I realize it doesn't really matter, but to answer the question, say what you want about me, out of all the videos I've heard from fellow creators, TFM and the way he speaks to his friends on his podcasts, Howard Dare and the way he mentors people, Sandman when he does his actual interactions, his interviews with people as opposed to making his daily videos, the ones that come across less scripted, they all speak with confidence. You don't really hear any hesitation. The tone of their voice is bold. The topics that they cover show a vast amount of experience that a person living in their mother's basement wouldn't be able to claim. Furthermore, their interactions with other people and the way that they can communicate with them imply a good social standing. I feel like going into a real-life debate with someone, they would likely win, and most of the people that they would hold close to them would back them up. Finally, when it comes to being able to choose your own path, to own your own life, get to do what you want, all of us are fundamentally dedicated to the idea of living our own lives, which to me is the definition of being alpha. Getting to pick who you want on your team. Being the person in charge of your own life. Then there's the argument, I can hear it now, but they don't have girlfriends, and that's one of the biggest defining features of being an alpha, apparently. Real talk for a minute. I alone have made well over 100 videos on the topic of interacting with women. You look at some of the thousands of videos that are out there from even individual creators within the MGTOW community. Does anyone really think that a MGTOW, after putting that much energy and effort into this topic, could not chameleon their way into a girlfriend's heart? Or at least into her bedroom, if they really wanted to? And then aren't they in a pretty good position not to get screwed over, if that was their true goal? I mean, yeah, it could still happen anyway, but what are the odds of it? Probably a lot better than for the average guy, right? And even the average guys are still out there getting laid, no accounting for quality. Not having met the other MGTOW creators in person, I do find it hard to believe they couldn't get laid if they wanted to. Bringing it back on topic, I don't perceive any beta or simp properties coming from any of these men. As I've said before, I feel like most of these people that are trolling or are trying to sling the word beta around as an insult are really doing so because they need people who take our life path to be of lower status, a lower category of person. In my case, snake. Because if not, then their entire life choices are invalidated. So much of their social standing is hingent on that, meaning it's required for them to feel good about themselves. Now finally, looking at myself, whether or not I would consider myself alpha, it is really not up to me to say. I come home to a quiet house with absolutely no drama. My only friends are close and trustworthy. My family all appreciates and respects me for the most part. I'm far from rich, but I have everything that I need, and it's paid off. The only things I have to work hard for is the projects that I want to build for myself. So I suppose we fall back on what you really want to define as alpha. Is it something that you want to allow others to define for you, or define you as or not? Or is it really being able to choose for yourself? Which perception between those two things is the most quote-unquote alpha? Perhaps I didn't give a solid answer one way or the other, but it seemed interesting to think about. On that note, I will end this video. I hope to see you all again soon. This has been Marcel.